You've heard us talking about it for a while now. Teachhoops.com/816 basketball. Check it out. Sign up for the free trial. Learn and grow as a coach. Again, teachhoops.com/816 basketball. Join Coach Steve Collins over there and on his Facebook community to just get incredible coaching resources. Again, teachhoops.com/816 basketball. And you know where I'm going with this next. Our boy, Billy Kegler and the Competitive Mindset podcast, absolutely rolling. He's had incredible guests. Even Alan Stein has joined him on the Competitive Mindset podcast. Catch it wherever you get your podcast and on social media at Competitive Pod, and you can still support our boy Takuma Lettsome during his fight versus ALS. If you go to our Twitter page at 816 basketball, there's a pinned tweet there for all information Takuma Lettsome about his fight against ALS, and you can donate to his GoFundMe there as well. Enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to the Greatest Games podcast, brought to you by 816 Basketball. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Rosefield, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kris de Blasio.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here as always on the Greatest Games podcast, a chance for us to catch up with basketball coaches from around the country and have them tell us about their greatest games. As always, it can be their time as a head coach, an assistant coach, a college coach, a pro coach, just whatever game they consider to be their greatest. Or Brian, I messed up the intro a little bit, even if they were a former first-round NBA draft pick.
They could be that. And they also could have already been on this show. This is the most roundabout intro ever, Coach, but they've already been on this show with maybe a previous guest that maybe called this guest on the phone. I can't even make any sense of it, but this we're just super excited to have one of the assistant coaches for the New Orleans Pelicans, Coach Rex Walters. Welcomes to the Greatest Games podcast.
Well, thank you, guys. It's nice to know I was a trifecta. You know, I covered all three bases on that one. So hopefully with this one, I'll hit a home run and you guys will have a good podcast, but no promises, no promises.
For those who don't remember, and Brian, I don't remember the episode number because I didn't look it up beforehand, but we had Coach Matt Doherty on, former North Carolina, Notre Dame head coach, talking about his book Rebound. And I mentioned something I thought I knew about Rex, and Coach Doherty called him up live on our episode.
When you get a call from Matt Doherty, you take it. I'll say that. Like he was got to play for him for a year, got to work for him for a year, and he knows this already. He's like a big brother to me. I've got a big brother. He's like another one. He's just a little bit meaner than my actual big brother.
He really did come across as a hard-nosed coach. He was episode 107 for us, and I was inspired getting up. I was like, oh, geez, I better make sure I don't upset Coach Matt Doherty. So, yeah, he definitely came across that way for sure.
Well, Coach Walters, why don't you take us kind of through your basketball journey and how you got to where you are today a little bit?
Yeah, so I grew up in San Jose, California. My father worked in the service, then he worked for Lockheed Missile Space. So we traveled a little bit. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, moved to Aurora, Colorado, and then Hawaii, and then finally settled in San Jose, California. Grew up there from about third grade on. I had a pretty good high school career. From there, I went to Northwestern for 2 years. Wanted to play in the Midwest, wanted to play big-time basketball. After 2 years, decided to make a change. I was going to go back closer to home, but then Kansas came calling. They were interested. They were coming off some recruiting violations from the previous regime. And I had a chance to go to Kansas, which I had watched that my entire sophomore year. I'd been watching them every big Monday where they were on. They were a great team with Kevin Pritchard, Jeff Geldner, Mark Randall, Pekka Markkanen, some great players. Got a chance to go there. That's where I did connect with Matt Doherty. My senior year, he was one of the assistant coaches. Then was drafted the first pick with the 16th pick of the first round by the New Jersey Nets. Spent about 2.5 years there. Was traded to Philadelphia. Played in Philadelphia about 2.5 years. Coaches figured out about 2.5 years in the NBA, like, hey, we got to either cut this guy, trade this guy. Something's got to change. But was released by the Sixers and then went to Miami, where I played there for about 2.5 years again. A total of 7 years total. Went over in Spain, played in Spain for a year. And then in between played in the ABA for Kevin Pritchard, who's now the GM of the Indiana Pacers. Played for him for a year in the ABA Kansas City Knights, went back to Spain, and after that kind of hung him up and got into coaching. So that's the brief playing background. So go with that what you want.
Coach, I want to take you to the transfer, and I've heard you talk about the transfer. I know you told the story about Dick Vitale and the graphic that was posted as you're sitting there watching a Northwestern game, and they label it as turncoat, that, you know, Rex should have never left Northwestern and that type of thing. And so I know that was back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And so now when you look at the transfer portal, that I have no idea how many kids are in the transfer portal, that so many kids are leaving school. Just talk more about what it was like transferring then, and what maybe just some thoughts on the transfer game right now.
I mean, first of all, when I left Northwestern, it wasn't a big deal. A lot of guys didn't leave. It was a 4-year deal. I thought about leaving after my freshman year, but I knew that I was going to play a lot as a sophomore. I thought I could make a difference. Realized really quickly, even though I scored a lot more points, I wasn't making a lot of difference in the win-loss column. And I wanted to play in the Ncaa tournament. That was a big dream of mine. Like a lot of guys that have probably been in the show, I didn't think about playing in the NBA. I just wanted to be the best player I could be and see where it went. But I wanted to play in the Ncaa tournament. So, because I was going to go home, was going to go back to either Santa Clara, maybe University of San Francisco, where I coached, and play closer to home. Because I figured if I'm not going to play in the tournament, at least I can play in front of my family, you know, and enjoy that. But Kansas did come calling. My AAU coach knew Bill Duffy, who knew Kevin Stallings, who was the assistant coach at Kansas. And so there was a connection there. He called, and they were interested. They were coming off some recruiting violations previously. I was able to go out and visit. It wasn't a fancy visit. I went to Robinson Gym in Lawrence, Kansas, which is, you know, I didn't go out. I didn't drink. I didn't, you know, party. I wasn't who I was, but I loved the idea of playing at Kansas. I love the fact that, you know, guys like Kevin Pritchard, Jeff Geldner, they moved the ball, they played fast, they shot the three. Like, that to me really excited me. So I decided to go to Kansas. And who knows, you know, I like to say I kind of started trends. So as a player, I kind of got the trend going of transferring. You know, as a coach, I got criticized a lot because we had some transfers at San Francisco, and now the thing's completely blown up, and it's a free for all now. I mean, when I think about coaching in college again, and I love where I'm at, I love who I work for, but obviously at some point you want to be a head coach again at some point. But that's a scary thing when you talk about, like, guys are just basically on 1-year contracts. They're you know, assassins for hire to try to get to a higher level. I felt like I was getting poached when I was at San Francisco back then. Now it's going to be rampant, and every school is not just going to recruit high school kids, junior college kids, but they're actively going to know who's thinking about leaving, and talking to AAU coaches, talking to high school coaches, talking to significant people in their lives. So when the time is right to make a move, you can't tell me that that's not going to happen. It was happening before. I know for a fact it was happening before when I was coaching in San Francisco. Now it's just going to be the wild, wild west. And so it's a crazy thing. I'm all for player movement. I'm all for player freedom. I want players to get what they think they deserve, but our game is going to change. And so that's a scary thing for me, who's kind of a basketball purist. I played for Roy Williams, you know what I mean? I played for Matt Doherty, you know what I mean? We're kind of basketball purists. And so the game is, something's going to be lost, and you're not going to have that connection. Like, when you think about Duke, you think about Christian Laettner in 4 years. When you think about Wake Forest, you think about Tim Duncan in 4 years. When you think about Kansas, you think about Danny Manning in 4 years. You're not going to see that nearly as much now, and even worse than maybe it was even 2-3 years ago. So that to me is kind of sad.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm not going to call out the previous guest that was on our show, but it was a college basketball coach that I was talking to the other day, and talking about recruiting and how it's just the coaches are now going to recruit the portal first. And then maybe, and you talk about junior college, and then maybe high school seniors. And I'm thinking, like, holy crap, I'm at Ridgeview High School in Columbia, South Carolina. We have a top 30 kid that's a sophomore right now. And that's great that we get all this attention, but now he's getting probably pushed down the line a little bit, because these college coaches are going to be looking at the portal first. And I get it. It's why not? If you have a guy that's been proven at the Division I level or whatever level, why not look there first? It's fascinating to me.
And for selfish reasons, I have a high school senior. I have a guy that's going to be a high school senior that I think is a pretty good darn player, but I know they're going to look transfers. Because you're right. Like if you get a guy that's gonna, average 10 to 20 points and he's going to transfer your place for 1 year, you know what you're getting in terms of being able and ready to play at that level. So also as a parent now, it affects me. You know what I mean? So it's really a crazy time. It is truly the wild, wild west. It's not something I'm really excited about when it comes to college basketball.
Well, Coach, part of the reason we wound up getting connected with you was I had said to Matt Doherty, he had mentioned your name, and I said, I believe he was the first Asian American to play in the NBA, and that's what sparked the phone call. And you had said there was somebody else. I did a little research. It was actually, this is crazy when I did this research, Watora Musaka was actually the first non-white person to play in the NBA in 1947-48 for the New York Knicks. As far as I can tell, when you were drafted, you were the highest ever Asian American draft pick at the time.
Yeah.
First Asian American to play in the Final Four. I know you've done some interviews talking about your Japanese American heritage. What does that mean to you? And obviously in the year we've had here, being an Asian American and the pride in that, and that you take in that, and some of the barriers that maybe you have broken down.
Well, I think the first thing, if my eyes were a little bit, not so wide, I might have had more endorsement deals. Like it really cost me a lot of money that I don't look that Japanese. I am full on Hapa, which is considered half. It's something I take great pride in. All of my best friends to this day that I hang out, I grew up in the Japanese American basketball leagues from which I started in fourth grade. From fourth grade on, I was playing Japanese American basketball with all of my best friends that entire time. So when I got drafted, it was a big deal for me. It was something my mom was truly proud of. I think that, when we went back to Japan, I did some camps back in Japan. Hopefully, I inspired some people because, there's a lot of great Asian American players. Jeremy Lin now has had a great career. We saw Roy Hashimura. He is from the motherland, I'd like to say, and I think he probably broke my streak of being the highest draft pick. But that's something of great pride. Yeah. I'm very proud of being a Japanese American basketball player. I'm very proud that not only did I do it in the NBA, I did it in the Final Four, and I was a coach, a Division I head coach as well. That's something I'm really proud of, not just for me, but for my friends. For my mother, she's really proud of that. She won't say more than 5 words to me when I call her. I know that's something she's proud of. You know what I mean? So it's something that's very, very cool that I am I'm really proud of.
Well, Coach, I don't mean to go a little off topic on mothers here, but if you want a mom to talk to you on the phone, you can take Brian's mom's number. She'll talk to you for hours.
Leaving it out
on the phone.
Okay.
And he can call your mom and have five-word conversation.
There you go.
she will certainly even it out. Okay. So, Coach, I had the great fortune of going to Japan in 2019. It's the last international trip that I was able to take before all of the pandemic and everything. And hopefully we'll be able to travel internationally here sometime soon again. Absolutely fell in love. I was there for 11 days, I believe. And just the people and obviously the food. Well, this is an audio podcast, thankfully, so folks can't see my size, but just it felt like it was just the most calm, peaceful, and yet busy place. I was in Tokyo, went to Kyoto, went down south a little bit, but tell our listeners and tell me why I need to go back to Japan and just spend more time there. What makes Japan so special?
Well, number one, if you get a chance to go back there and coach, like the whole arrangement of a game, you walk into a gym and the gym is a sacred place. Like you go in there with regular shoes. You go in there, you take your shoes off, you put slippers on, you go to your locker room, and then you put on your basketball shoes, right? Like that's kind of cool. Like the gym is a sacred place in Japan. When you get introduced in a game, and especially an international game, because I played there in international games as a high school player, they introduce each player, and each player goes out there and they shoot their shot. It's kind of like the old Hoosiers thing. Like, as you introduce the team for your first pep rally, they shoot their shot. I got to dunk one. Some guy would shoot a 3. Some guy would shoot a fancy layup. The whole production of a game in Japan against an international team is just really, really cool. The food is obviously great. The history is great. Like when I went back, I've always gone back with my mother. So that's always a special thing to me because she can translate. I understand what Urusai Bakatare means. That means shut up, stupid. Okay. But she can really translate a lot of things to me and help me understand what people are saying, and just a great history in Japan. For me, it's always something special. My wife has actually talked about, hey, we need to take the kids back. And I've got blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids, but like a chance to go back there and experience that culture. Like I got to go on the bullet train. And if the bullet train is supposed to show up at 12:05, guess what time it shows up at? It shows up at 12:05, like on the dot. Like their organization in Japan, it's amazing. And to get the chance to experience that and understand where my mother came from was really something unique and special for me.
It's so funny. I'm glad you brought that up. I remember, like I said, 11 days and standing at a crosswalk, and whether the light is green, it doesn't matter, or if there's no cars coming, anything like that. Japanese folks, they are going to wait until that walk signal is white and you walk across. And then if there's a moving escalator in an airport, everybody always stands to the right and they walk to the left. They follow the rules. And I'm like, I'm in heaven. I absolutely. And I remember flying back into Detroit and everything was just like it is in America. And I said, well, I'm back in America. That was a nice 11-day respite. But again, the people were so funny. I want to tell a quick story, and Blas, I know you got to get to the greatest game. But the first restaurant I walk into in Tokyo, I love getting off the beaten path. They spoke no English menus. And I walk in, and the gentleman that I ran the place, owned the place, I don't know, said something to me in Japanese, and I was just stone-faced, stunned, like, I don't know. And he goes, chicken, egg, noodle. And I go, yes. And he yelled something back to the cooks and brought out the most amazing food. And I said, I'm hooked. I want to come back here as often as I can. So love me some Japan.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
They call that the Rose Field now in Tokyo, chicken, egg, and noodle. It's
right.
called the Brian Rose Field now. So, Coach, why don't you take us through one or two of your greatest games? We'd especially like to hear some from the coaching end. Obviously, we know you had some great games as a player at Kansas, but take us through a couple of those games that really stand out in your memory.
Well, coaching, it's pretty easy. We played Gonzaga 3 years in a row and beat them. And so when you're playing against Gonzaga, you're playing against Elias Harris, who played in the NBA, Rob Sacker, who played in the NBA, Kelly Olnick, who's still playing in the NBA. We never beat Kelly, but, at our place, we would have some great battles against Gonzaga. And that's something we had great players. Angelo Clario, who's playing for Maccabi Tel Aviv, Rashad Green, who's Danny Green's little brother. This kid's an amazing kid. He actually fractured his wrist the game before his last game and played through it, right? Like, that's how tough this kid was. Cody Doolin, Cole Dickerson was a young player, Michael Dickerson's little brother. Okay. But, beating Gonzaga at home. And the best memory is in the third year. The first year we had a floor storming and our players were in it. The second year we beat them again. There was a floor storm. Some of our players went in it, right? And then the third year we had the students charged the floor again, and none of our players did it. They all walked and congratulated Gonzaga. And that was, to me, a really proud thing, because our guys felt like, no, we're supposed to beat these guys that are going to be playing in the NBA, that are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament. Like, we expect to beat these guys. So that, for me, as a coach, was always a really good thing. And then beating St. Mary's the year we beat St. Mary's, because those were the two teams. Like, I was really proud of some of the teams we had at USF. We won 20 games twice, which hadn't been done in over 30 years. We went to 3 postseason tournaments. But those two teams are always the two teams, in the West Coast Conference. And so for us to finish second twice and get over that hump were always special things for me. But obviously beating Gonzaga, beating St. Mary's, and St. Mary's was always tough. Randy does a great job. We only beat them once in my 8 years. Patty Mills, Matthew Dellavedova, Omar Samhan, but beating Gonzaga, and then the third year when we beat them and we expected to beat them, that to me was a very cool moment as a coach.
I'm going to divert off the games with Gonzaga for a second. I should have asked this in our normal Q&A segment. When you get the job at San Francisco, Do they have Bill Russell come in the office just to intimidate the hell out of you? Like,
it's really strange. Bill has not been on campus except for funerals of former players.
wow.
Yeah, it's a really tough deal. Like Bill Cartwright is back. I think he's actually working at USF, but Coach Bill Russell, the greatest winner in team sports of all time. Like he's the greatest winner. Like I've reached out to him when I was at USF, would have not a whole lot to do at USF. Really sad. And I don't know all the reasons why, but he always talks about the Celtics. He doesn't talk a lot about USF. It's interesting. But it was a tough job. Like when I walked in, they decided to paint the walls of my office. So all the furniture was pushed in the middle of the room. And I'm like, I got to get players. I got to recruit, so it was interesting. I remember walking through the front. We left Florida Atlantic University, and one of my younger sons said, "Is this really a better job than Florida Atlantic?" Like he was like, this place isn't, all that magical, but it was. On game nights, it was a special place. Beating Gonzaga, beating St. Mary's, beating St. John's when Coach Lavin was there, beating Colorado with Tad Boyle, who's a great coach at home. Seeing great former players that did come back and really supported and remembered the glory days, because back in the 80s, the early 80s, 70s, that was the program. That and UCLA, those were the two programs that really dominated the West Coast, when it talks about basketball in the United States. So that to me was really exciting to go there. But no, Bill Russell didn't come in and intimidate. I never had a conversation with Coach Russell, and I reached out to people to get to Mr. Russell, and it never happened. But they did say this, and it was really strange for me. They're like, "Hey, we don't care if you don't win a game a year. Beat Santa Clara. You got to beat Santa." I was like, hold on. No. We want to win championships. We want to, and that's kind of how it changed a little bit at San Francisco for me. But we had a great time. My family loved the city. We really enjoyed it. I still talk to a lot of our players that played, for me, and I was lucky enough to coach. But it was a hard 8 years, to say the least, when I was at San Francisco, to try to get that thing to a level that we thought we could compete at.
Well, Coach, this happens when the guest comes on and they say something. It sparks a trivia question in my mind, and I ask Brian, and he always gets it wrong.
Yeah, that's just kind of what
So Coach Walters mentioned Santa Clara University. What former NBA MVP, and I don't know if he's in the Hall of Fame yet, but he will be in the Hall of Fame, went to Santa Clara? Brian.
That's going to be Steve Nash.
Oh,
yeah, Rex, let's just be honest. You just witnessed history. I think out of 115 episodes, that might be my first correct answer. But that was a fun.
Give me this one. What NBA world champion also graduated from Santa Clara?
Uh-oh. Coach Walters stumped me. Who else went to Santa Clara?
While he's thinking, again, as we mentioned in the pre-show chatter, this is Kris de Blasio, who ran the Jeopardy category of Russian czars, and he's about to miss a basketball question. But go for it, Kris de Blasio.
I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. He played for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh,
and he had funny glasses that he wore every night.
Kurt Rambis? Did he go to Santa Clara?
Yeah, that was the big sales pitch when they recruited me. Kurt Rambis made it to the NBA, won a world championship, and obviously Steve took it to another level. But at this point, Steve doesn't have any of the championship rings, and maybe he'll get one this year.
That's true. Brian, I'll stump you with a follow-up question on that. Who did Steve Nash beat in the NCAA tournament as a 15 seed?
Ooh, that one I have no idea.
I know.
Coach Walters.
Arizona.
Yeah.
I was actually at Bryce Drew's house. We were recruiting a kid. I want to say his name was James Lofton, and he went to Tennessee, and he was a heck of a player.
Oh, yeah.
And we were watching that game at Bryce's house, recruiting James Lofton, who ended up going to Tennessee.
He could flat out just stroke it. So we worked in South Carolina together, Coach, and we watched him just bury threes for a couple of years.
There you go.
Start guys and all over the SEC. Coach, you mentioned good jobs versus challenging jobs, and I'm going to name drop on you. I've gotten the chance to go get to know Corey Schmidt a little bit, that was on staff with you at Wake Forest. Met him at a Final Four in Indianapolis. We'll tell that story off there, how we met. It's just a great great guy, and really honestly, and I'll tell him this to his face too, has a future in the game. He's going to keep climbing the ladder. Just a great guy. So if you were talking to guys like Corey or just anybody just trying to break into college basketball, how would you differentiate, hey, yeah, you need to get a job versus maybe don't take a job there? How do you tell a guy what job to take and give that advice to him?
Well, I think first I talked to Corey today. Actually, we talked today. Corey's the best.
He is.
And it's funny, when we were let go at Wake Forest, I said, you got to coach. Like, I don't care what level. I don't care if it's JUCO, Division II, NEIA. Like, you're a coach. You need to coach and get away from the administrative stuff, because he's great at that, but he's a coach. And someone's going to be really smart and make a great, smart decision and bring him onto their staff. There's no doubt in my mind. If I got a job again at some point, he would be a guy that I'm going to call and try to talk him into. I'm the worst recruiter. I tell him all the bad parts about a job, and how hard it's going to be, and see if they really want it. And he's the guy that would accept that challenge. But, I think the biggest thing with a job is, can you really compete and be in the top 3 in your league? I think that's the first thing. And so what it takes for that is, does your president, does your administration, and does your athletic director have that as a goal? And do they understand what it takes to get there, right? Like I talked about Gonzaga, like, they are so far ahead of really everybody in the West Coast Conference. They're going to be in the top 3 on a bad year, and they've always been the top 1, right? BYU is close, but they've gone back and forth. And St. Mary's, I think they have a great administration and AD, and Randy does a phenomenal job. So you got to have, if you're going to be an assistant coach, you want to look at those things. Does the president have that vision? Does the athletic director have that vision? And are you going to work for a man that understands what it takes in his league to truly compete for a top 3 spot in that league? Because if you're in the top 3, that means you got a chance to win your league. You got a chance to go to the NCAA tournament, and then your life becomes a lot better, a lot quicker. I didn't understand that quite well enough when I went to San Francisco. I've taken some not bad jobs, hard jobs, and we've actually got to the top 3, but I wasn't able to sustain it. But I think those are things you really got to look at. Do you have a man that you're going to work for that is about the right things, right? But also understands how to take that group and get them to a higher level. Like Randy Bennett does a great job of that at St. Mary's. They don't have the most talent, but he gets them to a higher level. Obviously, Mark's done a phenomenal job, but he's also done a phenomenal job in recruiting. So, and it's not always about the league. It's really not. It's about, Belmont, where Corey came from, they're a team that every year they've got a chance to win their league. They've got great coaching. They've got great infrastructure. They got a great, unified force. Like I said, president, AD, administration, coach, they're all really joined at the hip and really want to get there, because when you do that, then you have a chance. Then you have a chance to really succeed. And that's obviously, as a young coach like Corey or any young guy, that gives you a chance for upward mobility, right? And you're learning the right things and what it's supposed to look like. Like Roy Williams, I didn't listen good enough. Like, he stayed at Carolina forever, but then when Kansas finally gave him a shot, that's a job that you're going to be in the top 3, and have a chance to truly compete for league championships and even national championships. And so he was really smart to be patient and work his tail off while he was patient. And then when he got his opportunity, he made the most of it.
There's so much of that I love. And I go back to episode 34, Coach. We reference this coach a lot, Coach Rick Duckett, who's at Charleston Southern University now. And just what you're talking about, just having those 3 folks at the top, having the same vision and being able to have just that bought-in mentality, and not choosing a job where Coach Duckett would say, you can make your mouth say anything, where the president or AD is saying, oh, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. No, but just having that proof in the pudding is to be able to be sure that they really care about, like you say, doing it the right way, doing it well. I love that so much. We could snippet that and help a lot of young coaches that are coming up in the business with that one. So sorry, Kris, I had to jump in on that one real quick.
And Coach, we always like to ask this as our final question. If I asked some of the guys who played for you at Florida Atlantic, San Francisco, now some of the guys with the Pelicans, and I said, what's the one thing Coach Walters says over and over again? What would that be?
Wow. They would hear a lot of, well, especially now, get back. Get back. Like transition defense is a big, big thing. And they'd probably hear it at Wake Forest too when I was there. Later in my career at San Francisco, transition turned into a big, big thing. Like I believe it to my dying day. Like you've got to be great in transition defense. You've got to make teams play against a set defense as much as possible. So when the shot goes up, your get it guys, yeah, your 4s and 5s, or if you've got a great, like Rashad Green was a great get it guy. Like he would get 1 or 2 offensive rebounds for us a game. Yeah, go ahead and go get it, right? But your get back guys that have no chance of getting it, like no chance. Get back, set our defense, let's sprint, let's talk, right? Let's stop the ball, let's get matched up. And so another easy way of saying it is, number 1, protect the rim, stop the ball, right? Build a wall, and then get to your matchups. Like it's a big thing, and it gives you a chance, right, to be successful. So every time we're doing dummy offense, the shot goes up instantly. I'm yelling, get back, sprint back. It's a big, big thing. So they would probably remember that, especially as an assistant coach. I just thought that was so important. And I know it's really important. I work for one of the best in Stan Van Gundy.
It is. Oh God, it's so true. I hate the guys that stand in no man's land.
It's one or the other. It's like, it's like it's either get it or get back. And I would tell my get it guys, like, hey, if you don't get it, you got to get ahead of the ball, ahead of your matchups. You got to be protecting the paint, right? Protecting the rim, the paint, and then build out and get to your matchup. It just gives you a chance to be successful. It really does. And so that's something you can always control as a coach. Like I watched literally my son's game, and they played up this year, this last tournament, and transition defense killed them. And I was quiet. I was a good parent. It's really hard for me to be a good parent, but I was really quiet. And I'm just thinking, why in the heck aren't they just sprinting back? Like stop the layup, stop the insanity, and let's set our defense so they have to play against a set defense.
All right, I'm going to double down on this. What's one thing you remember that Coach Williams said over and over again, and you have to do it in your best Coach Williams voice?
Oh, gosh.
It probably was okay. It probably was something to the effect of, Rex, get on the line. Well, get on the line, man. I did something wrong, and I have to start running 22. But I got, especially my first year, I got a lot of trouble. Like I was talking to my AAU coach, and I was talking about like my son, like you got to be more aggressive. Like I was in a meeting with Coach Williams one time, and I never forget this. He's like, Rex, I was on, sitting out, so I'm on the second team. We're playing against the blue squad, which is the top 5. And coach is like, hey, Rex, you got to share the ball more. You got to make sure you move it. Don't always, and I said, Coach, if we're going to lose, I'm going down shooting. And that's the one time the coach was kind of speechless for a half second, like, what did this kid just say to me? And I was just thinking, hey, if we're going to lose, like I'm the best shooter on the floor, I'm going to shoot the basketball. But I got myself in a lot of trouble just like that. Right, where I didn't get to the long rebounder spot. I didn't stop an easy change of sides. Second loss of ball, which is your second turnover. Get on the line. We run our half quarter back. We'd run our down and back, and so a lot of times, especially my first year, I was like a mess defensively. I was always getting my team in trouble. We were always running down and backs because of me. So Rex, get on the line. Red team, get on the line.
I love it, Coach. I heard you say something that I probably won't forget on a podcast I was listening to, prepping for this show. You told the host of that show, you said podcasts are easy when you have a good guest. And you've been a great guest for us here in this recording. This has been awesome. We can't thank you enough for taking some time out, talking some hoops with us. It's been a lot of fun. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. Best of luck with the pod. I look forward to following you guys now that I know where you're at.
There you go. Well, we might have to just have a Coach Doherty and Coach Walters reunion. Maybe get even Corey Schmidt. I was texting with Corey today, so we're going to get him on the show as well. So we'll let you know when we drop that one as well. But we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. For my co-host, Kris de Blasio, I am Brian Rosefield, and thank you for listening to this episode of The Greatest Games.